Sun and moon, yin and yang, good war games and war games. You need a balance in life, I suppose, but for as good as the best war games matches throughout history have been, I'm not sure they balance out just how utterly dog shit the worst war games matches are. WWE is bringing the stip back this week, and by all accounts, the first two WWE branded War Games matches look like they're going to be pretty damn great. At least I hope they will be, because I cannot fathom the thought of any more matches reaching the depths that we're about to recap. For the sake of clarification as well, TNA's Lethal Lockdown matches shall count. They follow War Games rules as much as possible most of the time. There's only one ring, but otherwise it's about the same. And it's a lot closer to War Games than entry number 10. Hope you guys are prepared to hear the words fall brawl a lot. I'm Tempest, hailing from partsFUNknown, and these are the 10 worst War Games matches ever. And before we get on with our list, make sure of course that you like this video, hit subscribe and enable notifications to always on so you never miss a fun wrestling list just like it, and make sure to check out the list of the 10 best War Games matches. It will be much more cheerful than this is about to be, I promise. Number 10, Kevin Nash, Scott Steiner, Jeff Jarrett, and Vince Russo versus Booker T, Sting, Goldberg, and Chronic. WCW Nitro, September 4th, 2000. Is this a War Games match? WCW said it was, and when did WCW ever lie to us in the year 2000? This is gonna get slotted in here at number 10, not because the other matches on this list are worse than it, fat chance, this match is a steaming pile, but because it really is apples to oranges. The only thing that this match and the others on this list have in common is that there's a metal fence around the ring and there are staggered entrants. That's it. Otherwise, this monstrous creation is its own beast. The match can only be won by scaling this triple-decker steel cage and grabbing the WCW Championship, the world's most inconvenient ladder match. Then descend the structure and have the belt in your possession as you walk out the door. That ain't even close to War Games. And I haven't even talked about the match itself. This match watches like it was written by a hyperactive squirrel, with so much nonsensical garbage happening that it is impossible to keep track of. The Harris brothers just start fighting, it's impossible to keep track of who's aligned with who, all the while Vince Russo is in a hockey helmet trying to play wrestler. It ends with a classic Russo swerve, and you know what? It may be garbage, but I'd be lying if I didn't say I watched this with a bemused smile on my face. Number 9, Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and Fake Sting versus Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Lex Luger, and Real Sting. Fall Brawl 1996. Man, when WCW grabbed the top stars from WWE, they brought the WWE main event style along with them. This was a match that was merely prelude to an angle, as the whole match rested on where the allegiance of Sting truly lied. Hogan, Hall, and Nash took most of the match, but did do a solid job of bumping for Arn Anderson, Lex Luger, and Ric Flair when needed. The fourth member of the NWO's team was, as the WCW video game put it, Sting, a guy dressed and painted to look like Sting to fool the fans and I guess the WCW team, before the real Sting came down, laid out the NWO, then walked out on Team WCW for not trusting him in the first place. To be fair, this does seem like a catalyst event that would start the man called Sting's emo phase. The finish comes out of absolutely nowhere after this, as the fake Sting puts the Scorpion Deathlock on Luger and he just passes out. Again, a solid moment and one of the most crucial moments in the WCW-NWO rivalry, but unfortunately there is another 15 minutes of plotting action to sit through to get to it. Number 8, MVP, Willow, and the American Wolves versus Austin Aries, Bobby Roode, and the Bromans, TNA Lockdown 2014. What a bizarre match this is. Work-wise, it's nothing to sneeze at. You've got MVP, Davey Richards, Eddie Edwards, Austin Aries, Bobby Roode. It's a solid time. However, this match also has every TNA fan's favorite thing, Dixie Carter, because this match was contested over control of TNA, and thus there's a double helping of goofiness at the end. You had Jeff Hardy being removed from the building only for his shrieking alter ego Willow to take his place, making a high-pitched noise every time he was hit with a move, and you had Dixie's insurance policy, Bully Ray, serving as guest referee. This plan worked about as well as Vince's plan to hire Bret's entire family at WrestleMania 26, a plan that worked perfectly and everyone liked. Bully turned on Team Dixie and gave Team MVP the win, which is odd because he could have just helped out MVP the Wolves and Wally the Wasp as soon as he entered the cage. Number 7, Kevin Nash, Syxx, Conan, and Buff Bagwell versus Ric Flair, Chris Benoit, Kurt Hennig, and Steve McMichael. Fall Brawl 1997. I am still of the mind that Vince McMahon's WWE got the idea of beating babyfaces in their hometown from this era of WCW beating Ric Flair in the Carolinas. the Poor Horsemen. This match is more of a 15-minute prelude for another depressing angle. The action in this match is at the very least passable, as Chris Benoit did his best to pull a good match out of Buff Bagwell, but once the seemingly injured Kurt Hennig enters the match, it is over for the Four Horsemen. Hennig immediately turns on his team and handcuffs Benoit and Mongo to the cage, and they just beat on Ric Flair for ages. I had a birthday while they beat on Flair. Finally, they got the Horsemen to quit as they threatened to slam the cage door on Flair's head, a la Kerry Von Erich in World Class, only to follow through and scramble the Nature Boy's brains anyway. It also doesn't help that we get running commentary from Michael Buffer the entire time, as he feels the urge to announce every little thing as if the watching audience was filled with blind fans. The cage door bit is a memorable moment, but this match can be easily forgotten. Number 6, AJ Styles, Austin Aries, Mr. Anderson, Rob Van Dam, and Garrett Bischoff versus Bully Ray, Gunner, Christopher Daniels, Kazarian, and Eric Bischoff. TNA Lockdown 2012. Many of the best WarGames matches rely heavily on starting the match with the best worker from each team. Bobby Eaton, Arn Anderson, Johnny Gargano, Io Shirai. It makes sense that this section of the match with the least amount of smoke and mirrors would feature those who are best equipped to carry that load, which perfectly explains why TNA started this match with Adam Blampier's brother Garrett Bischoff and Jackson Riker. The other members of this match do their best to make up for it. I mean, AJ Styles and Austin Aries taking on Kazarian and Christopher Daniels sounds like a recipe for a good time, but the climax of this match is not any of the professional wrestlers wrestling professionally. It's Adam's dad beating his son with a stick for all the times he caught him watching Raw in the 90s, while yelling that Garrett should have stayed out of his business as the fans entertained themselves by chanting for other people not in the match. Non-wrestlers wrestling usually sucks, but putting two of them against each other as the featured performers of a match is a mistake TNA made with extreme regularity. Number 5, Davey Boy Smith, Dustin Rhodes, Sting, and the Shockmaster versus Sid Vicious, Vader, and Harlem Heat. Fall Brawl 1993. Just as important to a WarGames match as the opening two is who comes in as the final entrant. It doesn't have to be a huge surprise like Kevin Owens in 2019, but the last person to enter the cage should be the one most likely to fill the crowd with renewed energy after having watched 15 to 20 minutes of a match. That begs the question as to why the the Shockmaster was chosen as the final entrant of the 1993 WarGames match, and a better question still is why he won the match with a basic-ass bear hug after running wild for just a few minutes. This match played with the story of Dustin Rhodes being injured, but going against his team's wishes and starting the match against Vader anyway. But where this fell apart is basically the entire match was then just run by the heels, as Dustin was a non-factor for most of it. If he had entered last and fought through the pain to get the win for his team, this might have been pretty neat, but his injury didn't add anything to the match and detracted from it heavily, and again I must ask, why the was the Shockmaster chosen as the featured performer of this match? Number 4, DDP, Sean Waltman, and BG James versus Jeff Jarrett, Monty Brown, and Billy Gunn. TNA Lockdown 2005. It's Waltman's knee pads over his jeans that really do it for me. If you like watching half of DX several years past their primes wrestling one another in a mess of a cage match, this one is for you. Half of the initial 5 minutes doesn't even take place in the cage, and from there, it's just a hodgepodge of dudes hitting each other with trash cans. It is more of the TNA nonsense that some found charming, but now it's just a bunch of guys hitting each other in the head real hard, and no amount of Monty Brown being full of beans could make up for that. They also f***ed up the finish of this match to make matters worse, a fact the crowd let them in on by chanting "you f***ed up" after a botched cover, and then Waltman immediately hit a roll-up that was also kicked out of but was the end of the match, with the commentators trying to figure out whether or not the match was actually over, which is always the best thing for your commentators to be saying during the most important part of a match. Number 3, Toxic Attraction and Dakota Kai versus Cora Jade, Raquel Gonzalez, Kaylee Ray, and Io Shirai. NXT WarGames 2021. The WarGames advantage is an easy stipulation to book. The bad guys have an advantage and beat up the good guys, and then the babyfaces even the odds and fight back. Rinse, repeat works every time. Why NXT decided to flip this concept on its head for the poor women involved is beyond me. At NXT TakeOver 2021, we got the worst example of this to date, as the babyface team of Cora Jade, Raquel Gonzalez, Kaylee Ray, and Io Shirai took on Dakota Kai and Toxic Attraction. This is a concept that could probably work if there was a heel turn or an injury angle to realign the babyface heel dynamic, but this match just doesn't do that. The good guys outnumber and beat up the heels, and then the heels fight valiantly against the odds as the crowd cheer them on. That is the opposite effect that you want! Add in the fact that this was the worst worked WarGames match under the NXT banner due to the inexperience of a number of those involved and an anticlimactic finish of an injured Cora Jade crawling over to make a pin after Raquel's finish, and this was just no fun. Number 2, Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Lex Luger, and Sting versus the Dungeon of Doom. Fall Brawl 1995. Molasses, Glaciers, Continental Drift, Pete making guesses in Survival Series. What do all of these things have in common? They're all not quite as slow as the pacing of this match. A lot of the matches on this list are here because of a ridiculous angle that compromises the quality of the matches, or maybe the match itself was just so batshit insane that it had to be featured. This match is just fucking boring! They took the slowest and least exciting heels on the WCW roster and just put them in the most bog-standard WarGames match possible. There's something very 90s about Michael Buffer announcing the Dungeon of Doom from places such as the Great Barrier Reef, the Yin and Yang, and deepest, darkest Africa. This is the same year that Tupac was releasing Me Against the World, bro. Why is Hulk Hogan wrestling a shark? Hogan basically works heel for some reason, immediately throwing salt in the eyes of every heel, raking John Tenta's eyes, biting Brutus Beefcake's stupid Zodiac face. It's just so odd. If this was the best that WCW had to offer, it's no wonder no one was watching wrestling in 1995. At number 1, DDP, Roddy Piper, and The Warrior versus Bret Hart, Hulk Hogan, and Stevie Ray versus Kevin Nash, Lex Luger, and Sting. Fall Brawl 1998. Holy shit, this is one of the worst matches I have ever seen in my life. When people talked about the glory days of the NWO and WCW in general, they sure as shit don't mean this. Oh, how this match sucks. Let me count the ways. First of all, despite this match being able to end at any point regardless of whether or not all the competitors had entered the match, no one in this sluggishly paced match wrestled with one bit of urgency. Worse still, this match was contested over a WCW World title shot, with the person securing the pin getting the shot, meaning everyone was attacking the field, including their partners, so there were essentially no teams at all! Despite this, there were still staggered entrants. And even worse still, the entrants were in a completely random order, with 2 members of the NWO Hollywood team in the ring before anyone from NWO Wolfpack. Because there were no teams in this match, the match has zero flow, as it's just half a dozen aging wrestlers clubbering each other. Then, Hulk Hogan jumps the gun and enters the match with a minute left on the clock, because I guess you can just do that with no consequences. Why have a f***ing clock? And then, if all that wasn't enough, we get spooky bullshit with the Warrior appearing in a puff of smoke like the world's shittest Batman, and that includes George Clooney. Warrior also jumps the clock, and Hogan is too scared to continue, so he runs away. It doesn't even matter who won. We all lost by witnessing this. And that's our list. Make sure, of course, that you like this video and subscribe and enable notifications to always on so you never miss a fun wrestling list just like it. Make sure that you check out the list of the best WarGames matches ever. I have a lot more fun watching those matches. And until then, I've been Tempest. Jam that jam.